da 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 da. Yes. Dun 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 dun. Yes. Da 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 da. Wow. Boom.
I love it.
That's energy.
I love it. That was Danny Tseng. He's joining us, our special guest today. And Danny,
I salute you.
Carly, I love that. That was great.
Pleasure to be on board.
Wow, what energy, man. I love it.
You are going to, hang on a sec before we get into it. Quick shout out to Mark and Skylux. Skylux for letting us.
Skylux,
thank you very much all the time.
You guys are doing roofing, flat roofing,
give them
siding,
a call. Check them out.
flashing,
Instagram.
soffits,
They are the bomb.
gutters.
Get them to do.
We love Skylux.
Thank you, Skylux. Thank you, Mark, and everybody there. And we want to thank all of our listeners because you guys keep on growing every single day. We're feeding, we're doing the show, we're making the show happen, we're committed to it, and we want to bring as many interesting podcasts as possible.
And we're talking about things nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. So today's guest, we have a architect here in the house. Danny, tell us a lot about you and how you got into this business.
Yeah, for sure. How I got into this business? Well, after finishing school, I know that one day I want to lead a firm or at least start my own. After work, I'd go out to events and started hitting as many as I could and eventually started picking up clients on the side. What I love most about the industry is basically bringing vision from idea, like a sketch and concept, and then seeing it built.
How would you do that intro? How would you go to these events and go to somebody and go, listen, I want to design something for you? How do you do that?
Anything after that introduction. Anything's possible.
True.
Honestly, it always starts like, hey, I'm an architect. And they're like, oh, I played Lego as a kid. I wanted to be an architect too, but I wasn't too good at physics and math. And I'm like, I ain't either.
You don't need to be. That's what the engineers are for.
Absolutely. And nowadays, buildings are so complex, right? Like the whole notion of a master builder, which came from Roman times, Vitruvius and so forth. Like we don't have any of that. Buildings are so complex.
Yeah.
So we need consultants here and there and all that.
How long did you, how long you been doing it?
I've been doing it for 10 years now.
10 years now.
Yeah,
There's a magic number
cool.
here, Carlito, eh? 10 years kind of thing? Decade?
You know what? You could do a lot in 10 years.
Yes, you can.
So what you can, like we talked about this before, I said, whatever you've been doing up to the age of 40, this is typically what you'll end up continually doing. But now I'm looking at things differently.
No.
You can really do a lot in
You
5
can
or 10
reinvent
years.
yourself.
If you put 100%,
Yes.
all your energy into something that you're passionate about, you will succeed.
So where did you study? Did you study? Where did you study to?
Did my master's in architecture at U of T.
Were you born here?
No, I was born in Taiwan.
In Taiwan. And when did you come to Canada?
When I was 9.
9? Parents chose Canada over the U.S.?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, there's a big smile on his face.
like
Get it? We same thing for us. Our parents chose Canada over the U.S.
I think the ship my dad just jumped off the ship and he didn't have a choice. He was like, land.
They're like, looks legit. Well, I just park our boat here.
So I want to know more about, the design. How was school? And how was that, getting that whole process?
School was very academic. At U of T, there's an emphasis on design and the research behind the actual design. Like we always start with research, understanding the sites, the requirement and whatnot, and then we eventually go into design at the very end.
And do you guys get it to any hands-on?
There's a few courses in school, technical classes, but for the most part, essentially in design school, they teach you how to think like a design partner, essentially. Like a design partner at an architecture firm. And,
I always felt that way, that architects are designers.
Well, that's how they should be, no? Isn't that how it should be?
It was only until after graduation where I actually learned things like building code. And
they didn't even touch upon building code in school?
Very, very briefly. Some programs do, like some more technical schools out there, like Ryerson is a program like that. There's actually an entire course dedicated to the building code. But then for the most part, for where I did my schooling, there wasn't that much of an emphasis on that.
Wow.
So it was purely on like the academics of design and the research rigor behind all that shit.
Do you know that we as contractors have to have an OBC, an Ontario Building Code book, both of them, parts 1 and 2, in our vehicle at all given times?
Wow.
That's like, I hated that thing. It's expensive to begin with, and there's no way you can. I flipped through it, but I don't know it.
I'm sure you probably got it for free.
No, I did not. I actually had to pay for it. I have no strings in the government, okay? Not whatsoever.
I have a serious question.
Yeah.
Do you feel that when you were going to school and now that you're hands-on in this industry, do you feel that you could have learned something that you didn't learn?
Honestly, there were so many things I learned on the job, and then interacting with people outside the industry that they don't teach you in school.
Because it's different from the paper to actually getting on the job site.
Absolutely.
Right. There's a lot of things that
completely
you don't really see until you're actually on the job site.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
If you could have done it again, what courses would you have taken to help you now?
Having a strong understanding of the building code would actually have been ideal.
Really?
Because here's the thing, like a lot of designers, architects, and contractors and so forth groan when they think of the building code. But,
Really?
But well, at least when I was starting out, like when architects have to touch the building code, they're like, oh, we gotta flip through.
Are they frustrated by it because they've come up with a concept design wise? All of a sudden, you're telling them you need to change your design because it needs to meet the building code.
That's part of it, but I've since come to really embrace the building code. Like it's the one thing that actually keeps us employed. Like if you think about it, putting together a permit and stuff, that goes through the building code. There has been a lot of thoughts that's gone into that. The examiners at the city call the building code basically like the minimum requirements needed for a building or design.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's a good guideline. I do think it's necessary as well. It's put in place so designs like not like the Wild West where you can have all sorts of shit going around.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we still have that happening.
Well, we've always said, what is it? We've always said that the building code is basically the minimum standard to make things safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Building wise.
It's changing so fast. How do you keep up? Because as contractors, one day I know the code, and then the next day, say, Manny will come to me and say, no, that changed last week.
I've never done that.
No, I'm not saying you did, but I've had conversations with people, and it's changing so fast. Like our value in attics has gone up to 60. It used to be at 40.
Well, the provincial building code, the Ontario building code here in Canada is always 2 years behind the national building code. What I dislike about both codes is that they will not recognize each other. So even though you know that the national is already embraced in something, provincial won't acknowledge it. They say we won't acknowledge it until it's actually put into the OBC, which basically means there's that process. So all of a sudden you have to let them go through their process, and all of a sudden they can get it approved. Then it'll be fine. We know about this, like Carlito, honestly, we knew about this about spray foam. For years and years, spray foam was always a negative, and they wouldn't allow it in the building code, and you had to build around it. You had to put a vapor barrier in front of it, and all of a sudden they realized you can't do that
because moisture.
You're choking the spray foam. But that came from the national building code, so it's just like I wish they would just get on the same page. Why do we? I guess it's kind of like put the Winter Olympics with the Summer Olympics at the same time. It doesn't make any sense. You can't do it.
You're right. So how do you keep up? Is it a lot of reading?
Lots of reading, and then the provincial building code changes every 6 years. So there is a bulletin that I go on once every quarter just to check things out.
And what is that? So I could go on.
Send you the link afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, do you know the address offhand or no?
No.
Okay, we'll put up the address later on, but so you can actually check it out and
you can actually check it out, and if you need to purchase any of the addendums in print, you can.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of my big pet peeves when an inspector comes in and he says, "Oh, you can't do that," and it's our duty as contractors or architects or engineers to do that research and keep up to the changes, and they're not really telling us what's changing and when it's changing, right? They're just saying it's changed, and some inspectors can't even keep up.
Danny, when was it that you went on your own? When was it that you felt that you were ready to go on your own? Because I'm always amazed by contractors that come here and talk to us. I think every single person has told us a story about them starting out working for somebody, learning what they could, and then felt that they were ready to go on their own. When were you ready to go on your own?
So in my case, I was getting really burned out. I was working 2 jobs. My day job, my 9 to 5, and then I also had my freelance projects. This was back in 2015 or so, and I was essentially waking up at 5:30 in the morning, doing my own stuff, and then by the time I was 8:30, I put on some clothes, go to work.
Wow.
And then I was still going to a lot of events. And then eventually I started getting really burned out. Yeah, at the end of 2015, I ended up signing a project that would essentially allow me to go off on my own. And so there was a hard decision between whether or not I'll stay at the day job or not. And I was really wrestling with this. What ended up happening was the company I was with was going through some slow times, and they actually laid me off. And I was like, you know what?
I'm leaving.
This just solved my issue already, because I was thinking in my head, like, I had no idea how I'm actually going to manage this, because it was a big project. It was a townhouse development. Yeah.
How many units?
14.
14 units. Wow.
Well, it's hard going out on your own. You know, you get so used to having that security of people helping you and then taking that leap. So was it good that someone pushed you over the edge?
I think so, because what actually would have ended up happening was what I probably would have held on to the security of the 9 to 5 and continued doing it, and then
The safe, being safe.
eventually, yeah, and it was really burning me out. I didn't know what the concept of burnout meant. And, like,
Ask
I was like,
Carlito.
yeah.
Yeah.
Until I fully experienced it, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do my own thing, and here I am 5 years later.
And how many guys do you have working for you now?
We have right now we're a team of 9 now.
Wow. So who's who?
I have a business partner who's an interior designer.
Okay.
And then we have recently just brought on a intermediate/senior interior designer, and the rest of our staff are essentially junior interior/architectural designers. So because my business partner is an interior designer, we do bridge the 2 different disciplines.
Is it residential, commercial?
Both residential and commercial.
Can you walk us through the process from where like a client reaches out to you? I guess I'm assuming it's all word of mouth, or are they finding you through your webpage?
2 things. One is through direct, like just pure networking. And
At events, at functions.
yeah, like events, functions, and the other is through referrals.
What type of events are you attending?
I used to attend like basically everything, like anything I could get my hands on.
Sociable
Like,
events,
social-
just so you can
yeah.
bump into, rub elbows, and go, by the way, I'm an architect.
Pretty much, I was essentially doing it for sport because prior to all this, I had social anxiety issues
Okay.
and also a stuttering problem. So
Okay.
I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hit up as many of these as possible and then resolve it.
You just dove right
And
in.
just dove right in, and then eventually just got really good at it and became like a sport for me. Ended up picking up clients from these events, and I'm like, you know what? It almost seems like an organic lifestyle. Like I go out there, it's my hobby anyway, and then I'm also doing business development. But what I've realized is that the return on investment on these things isn't great because yes, I'm going to a lot of these events face to face. I realized that it was more important to be selective about where I'm going to. So
Why? The type of clients that you were meeting?
yeah, like for instance, if I go to an event that's say fashion focused,
Okay.
and then I've ended up meeting a lot of media people and people in fashion and stuff. Great and interesting people to talk to, but they might not necessarily need to have an office constructed or a building built. And
Are they fun to work for? The fashionistas?
I have no idea. I never worked with one.
Oh,
but-
no, you haven't?
yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious about it. So you met a lot of people that way, and that's how it got started, and then...
Yeah, so I end up becoming more selective about where I'm going to. So pick events where there's more possibility of actually meeting potential clients. So things like tech company events, they're always great for meeting potential commercial type clients.
Got
and
it.
then also real estate events, of course, more chances of meeting developers or running into someone that might know someone who needs to have something designed.
What do you like more? Do you like commercial more or residential more?
I like working with clients that have an interesting design problem.
Okay.
So like
Solving.
Exactly, and doesn't necessarily need to be which I don't oscillate or specifically say I want to work on only a residential or only a commercial. Like,
Yeah.
I just enjoy projects that inherently have an interesting problem that needs to be
So
solved.
walk us through, we come into the offices at Syllable there, and all of a sudden, walk us through how you guys take care of a client.
Yeah, so there's a few process. The kickoff, like that's where we fully understand what they need in the space. So if it's a office client, for instance, we'll figure out how they work. If they have a previous office, we'll visit them and then see what their current setup is like, and we'll talk about what works for them, what doesn't work, and then ask them what it means for them to be successful.
What if it's a residential? I want to take a resident because I think most of our
Yeah.
listeners are kind of more residential custom. I walk in and I don't know, whatever. We could just say that we've got an existing structure there and we're going to tear it down and we want to build a new structure on there. Obviously, we want to make it bigger, more updated. How do you start that process, that kickoff thing? What do you? You're spitballing ideas with them, or they're going to give you their wish list? How does that work?
So their wish list, and then there's
Reality.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, perfect.
Just about to
Oh
say.
my god! And they only have so much square footage. There's only so much budget, and then there's zoning regulations that they have to follow.
So what
all
kind of
those
face
things.
do you put on when you hear these things and they're coming from a client and you know that they're not reasonable?
There was so very early on in my career, I ran into a client who was essentially just changing their ideas, and then
That never happens.
like
all change their
consistently,
ideas.
and then like the scope just keeps on increasing.
What
And
was
that
the reasoning behind the changing?
Well, that was because I don't think they fully understand what they want yet. So like we were giving them designs that were what they asked for, and then when they see it, they just kept on going. And what I learned from that experience is the importance of saying no, and saying it early.
We've learned that too.
We got totally. Was this a husband and wife?
Yeah, it was a husband.
So I've had those nightmare kind of clients where they want to build two different houses on the same lot.
Mm-hmm.
They want to build her house and they want to build his house, which you can't. It's physically impossible,
Which
right?
is supposed to
Yeah.
be the same house.
It's supposed to be the same house, exactly, same house, but it doesn't happen.
But
that
then the
way.
kids start to add in too.
How do you cope with that? How do you deal with the clients that are like that? So you just tell them straight out no.
Now I just tell them straight up no. I say, look, this is the reality. Like you have so much square footage you can work with, and you have this much budget. It's almost like a game of addition and subtraction. You want something, something is going to go.
Are you like me, where I like you came to this country pretty much? I was a little older when you came here. Probably,
Where did you come from?
I came from the Azores. I
Oh.
came from France first, right?
Wow.
But yeah, but I was around the same age as
Fancy.
well too. Not fancy, dude. It's not wealthy. There's
Oh,
nothing.
I meant to say France.
Fancy. But okay, I go back to Europe or I go to different countries and they have smaller homes, smaller rooms, smaller everything. And then you look back when you come home and it's such big spaces here in North America, including Toronto, mostly in the States, but also in all over Canada. Are you kind of dumbfounded that people can't live in a smaller space? Like, are they just want to maximize the lot, maximize the home, and just have pure home on that lot? Is that
I think it's a cultural thing. Like
Really?
in North America, if you look at a lot of the houses in the suburbs and stuff, it's the whole American dream in the nuclear family, right? Like you buy a house, you have a lawn, you have a dog, and then you have like 5 bedrooms that you don't even use.
En
And then-
suites for each one.
You're totally right. Like all my cousins that are well off in Europe, they don't have big houses. They have nice cars.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
don't
No, but they
show
have big-
off.
they have big
don't show
lots.
off their money.
they have big lots?
They have manageable lots.
Yes.
Their maintenance is realistic.
Yes.
A lot of people here, like you said, are overbuilding, trying to, I don't know what kind of peace of mind that it makes to have a 25,000 square foot home with 2 people.
Are we safe to assume that they're begging for that massive kitchen and they're begging for that master bedroom and master ensuite? Is that like the two primary gimme? Is that what they're always asking for?
They're always asking for more living space for sure, whether it's a larger living room or kitchen.
Well, I like to back it up a little bit. I think a lot of people get mixed up with engineer and architect. I think that what people need to understand is that you need both. Even more important, we're trying to open people's eyes. Everyone has to have an architect in any renovation. When I go to get a job, I'm always pushing for permits. I'm always pushing to do it on the books. A lot of people will stay away from an architect because that's legal. They want to do illegal. They want to save money. No, they don't want to pay.
I think it's a combination
They don't want
of-
to pay WSIB.
Well, I think it's
they
a
don't want to
combination.
get permits.
I think it's a combination of both. They don't want to pay your architect fees, to be honest, and then they don't want to deal with the permit process and inspectors.
You know, we're trying to expose the right and the wrong. All my jobs, I have to have you. So I have an existing home, and then I propose to the customer what they should have or what they are capable of handling with their budget, and then you guys come in and make it realistic. That's when you actually put the numbers to it and say, this is what you can really do, what you can't. And then an engineer gets involved. You guys are drawing houses all the time.
But we're not there yet. Hang on a sec. We're not there. So the clients come in, they give you your wish list, you give them a wake up call. Then from there, you whittle it down to what we think you want, and then you guys come up with concept from there.
This is where the conversation starts. Like we have a discussion about what's possible and what's not. We talk about what it means for them to win, and then we work from that angle. The conversations, for instance, for one project, the client wants to have more living space, more dining area, but he just doesn't have that space. So what we did was we combined essentially the kitchen and the breakfast bar, and the dining area all into one. And we merged a kitchen island.
Open concept.
With seating and all that. And then we created a space where the backyard patio door, floor to ceiling, glass facade that can open up to double their outdoor living space. That was through a conversation with the client on how we maximize space. So it's about taking what the client wants and then looking at the reality and then thinking about creative solutions to see if we can actually.
So you're
help
using
them win from
visual, you're using, I guess, subconscious solutions for them to experience that they're getting everything. So you can't get this monster kitchen space, separate dining space, separate family space, but what you're doing is you're getting, I guess, the essence of each room, and you're combining it all together and to make it one larger space. So when they walk through that space, they feel like they've got everything that they asked for, but you did it in the means that they're allowed to do it for the reality
Yep.
portion of it. That makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, we don't shy away from constraints and also restrictions. In fact, that's where the greatest creativity comes in. Like it's actually more difficult
right.
to design something where you can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
And it's like well, what is that exactly? But when we define some of the restrictions, some of the constraints, and then think about what the client truly wants, that's where the magic happens. That's where we can design actual solutions that goes beyond just something pretty, something that is quote unquote functional. But what if it's something that can totally go beyond with just what the client initially intended.
And then, okay, so from that process, and all of a sudden, you're ready for drawings. They signed off on it. They're expecting you to submit it to permit, or are they already talking to you about bringing in a contractor?
The initial conversation, what we talk about is the entire process. Through that initial conversation, whether or not they need a permit has already been discussed.
Okay.
So we actually set up a timeline that has everything mapped out.
If they need a permit.
Yeah, if they need a permit. Not every job requires a permit.
When do architects get involved that they don't need a permit?
I've never heard of that.
So say if it's a house and then you're keeping the location of the plumbing
For sure. If you do not move any of the waste lines, if you don't move any load-bearing walls, you don't need a permit.
Remove and replace.
Yeah, you're basically remodeling the place. That's all you're doing.
Yeah, or like.
But you have clients like that? Because I've never heard of a client like that because they always want to move walls and they always want to move plumbing. Which are the
that usually for me is just the contractor and the homeowner.
For projects where we don't do a permit, there are simply just interior design jobs.
Got it.
So we're just changing the materials and just updating the look.
Do you get a lot of clients who say that they want to bring the contractor in, or you guys are making the recommendation for the contractor?
So sometimes the client comes in with their own contractors, but then oftentimes we tender out the projects to contractors.
Guys that you trust.
Yeah, guys that we trust, and they're all like pre-qualified lists. We do our due diligence. We figure out what's the contractor's strength are, and then we send out our drawings for them to get pricing. And whatever quote that the client is getting are already pre-qualified contractors that we think would be good for the job. I always recommend my clients not just to go with the lowest, because obviously that's what a lot of clients do. They look at it, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to go with, but I recommend go with the contractor that would do the best job.
Or you feel more comfortable with, I guess.
Well, the gut feeling, right?
Exactly.
We've always said that, right?
Yeah.
Like, go with your gut feeling and how you feel about the contractor. You're tendering out the job, you're getting different quotes, you're presenting the quotes to the client, then the clients are reviewing the quotes, and then they select one, and then they basically look at the contractor, meet with them, and then discuss it from that point.
Yep. Oftentimes we narrow it down to 2 or 3. And then most often just 2, and then we have them interview them, get a feel of what they truly like, and then go from there. But
so if you're narrowing it down to 2 or 3, how many are you bringing in to tender? How many are you looking at?
typically 4 or 5.
4 to 5, okay, and then you're bringing it down to 2 or 3, and then the clients can decide from there.
Exactly.
They would have the final say, or
we give them our recommendations, but ultimately we let the client make the final call.
Okay.
Do you find that contractors change a lot of your guys' ideas, and does it become better if they do?
Like how we work is we see contractors essentially as our design partners, because it takes us to design, but it ultimately takes the contractors or builder to bring the designs to life. It's the best when a contractor can interpret our drawings and then possibly come up with better ways to do it.
So is that considered a red line then? Like you guys are doing changes? Is that an extra charge, or?
If there's changes that needs to be made on site, if it's drastic, like we issue change orders. For something minor, it's it's more of a conversation that we have with the contractor, either on site through emails.
Do you like your clients to actually, do they expect you to take care of the whole inspection and the permit process, or you want the contractor to take care of that inspection and permit process?
Inspection? Do you mean like contract admin?
No, any inspectors coming in from the city, so they actually look at the
right.
job. So, I mean, are the clients looking towards you to take care of it, or are you handing it off to the contractor?
For the most part, the contractors interface directly with the inspector. And then if there's anything that requires or support, we're there to be there for the client and the contractor.
I agree with that. So for me, customers hire me. I usually bring an engineer in, for point loads, and then I'm always excited to see an architect because I know that means the job will be starting soon. Yep. So architect comes in, proposed, existing. All of a sudden, I get a permit. I don't like getting permits. I don't like homeowners getting permits.
Why don't you like getting permits? I actually like getting permits.
These guys are already in the office.
That's the best place to try your jokes, man, because they're so serious at the city department.
But you know what? You like calling in Reno Run to bring your material.
No, but that's different though.
No, but it's not, because you're taking time away from the job site to go run and get a permit when you can get a complete package. And if there's something that they're missing, they'll probably see that and they can just call their buddy and say, hey, just change that for me.
True.
And it gets done. It gets taken care of, right? The way I look at it is everyone should call an architect, no matter what, on every project.
Of course,
I agree.
Yeah. Of course, man.
Any good contractor has an architect. Do you have an engineer?
Oh yeah, mechanical, electrical, structural, of course.
In-house?
Not in-house, but we do have people that we call up.
And do you get a lot of work from contractors like me and Manny?
Some, not
But it's mostly from that social networking kind of thing.
and also referrals.
Referrals, yeah.
And right now we actually get more business through referrals.
Do you find that Instagram or anything like that helps you a lot?
So we find that Instagram is a good way to essentially build our presence. It's also a way to essentially communicate our expertise. Like through our posts, we like to talk about the design issue and then how we come up with a solution for that. So every post is driven to be and also designed to be value driven.
Well, we get a lot of contractors on the show, and we talk to them outside of the show that they get a lot of work. They get a lot of leap of faith, trust work from their social media, specifically Instagram, right?
Yeah, and it certainly helps. A client, for instance, who's not that familiar with our work, they see our Instagram post and they website and understand what we do. Yeah. And the Instagram is a great way to just show personality as well.
That's exactly,
I wanted to lead to that. We all have our own trademark. Everyone knows Manny goes above and beyond with everything he does. I'm known as the guy that cleans up jobs that people screw up and that needs to be finished, and nobody wants to go in to knock those off. What's your trademark? You must be known for something that you always carry in your architecture.
So we don't have a specific style, just because everything we do is so client driven.
Driven, yeah.
So we call ourselves syllables simply because kind of like how words are individual sounds that don't mean anything, but when they come together, they form meaning. That's essentially how we work. We see everyone as collaborators. So I would say our trademark is simply maximizing everything that a space has to offer and come up with creative solutions based on what the client needs to win.
But you have yet to meet the same kind of client, right? Like you're getting clients
Every
that are coming in,
different.
bringing in different kind of problems.
Exactly.
And then you guys got to solve them in different situations, right? Different ways.
Yeah.
But that's the whole nature of the bit. I mean, like I know there's a lot of successful guys out there that are building the next, shaker style kitchen. It could be the 100th one or the 1000th one.
As long as the customer's happy.
It would drive me crazy personally, but I get it. But I mean, I kind of like your Danny, like I kind of like the way that you looked at a syllable, whereas you bring in different people, they come in, they have their different problems, you solve their problems and then they're happy and they move on. Then somebody else comes in with different problems and starts all over again. I like that angle.
Thank you.
I like challenging architects. I like yourself, I like to do most of the designing, the wall moving, like where I want to do the overhangs or how big a window should be. I typically just get the customer to just deal with the architect just to get the job going so I can take it and control it.
Well, you got a question there?
Well, I got a couple.
Go ahead. Shoot.
What is the difference so that everybody knows an engineer, an architect, and a contractor are in construction?
So what an architect does is we translate ideas into drawings, and the contractors takes these drawings and builds it. What the engineer does is making sure what is proposed also works. And every engineer is different. Like a structural engineer, what they do is they calculate the different dead loads and live loads within the building and propose structural design that works with what we're proposing. Mechanical deals with HVAC to make sure that the interior air quality is sufficient.
It's always the challenge
plumbing.
for open concept designs and buildings. And you can see that, I can guarantee you that most HVAC guys are bald. They've just pulled all their fucking hair out just because of that. It's like open concept, and they want return and also airflow and heating and cooling, and they have to make it suffice, right? And then a lot of glass, a lot of glass. So those two factors kill mechanical guys. They just like they're pulling their hair out. So yeah, I get it. And then the electrical as well, because I guess a lot of clients are asking for a lot of illumination. They're like going ballistic now with accent lighting, all kinds of lighting, task lighting, practical, everything like that. Exactly. So I can only imagine what the grocery list is on these days. I want to lead towards, what are the trends going on in residential nowadays? What's going on? Like, what are people, I'm assuming they're asking for a lot of glass. I'm assuming they're asking for taller ceilings. I'm assuming they're asking for bigger spaces. They're asking for all these open voids, and then they're also asking for sound. Like, do you get into that whole world? Do you get into that conversation with clients about sound transmission and also, building envelope and how serious they are with it?
That's a good point.
Like neighbors being so close to each other. Like, these are all things that we're so aware of, and we but everybody has a different mousetrap when it comes to this world. Are you guys recommending that, like, to people, to clients?
So I'm going to touch upon acoustics. It's not
huge,
not something that a lot of people think about. If it's a commercial application, we talk about the need for acoustical performance. Like if you're in a boardroom, you don't want echoing. You want to be able to hear each other talk. And same thing with restaurants as well. And if you're in a residential space, areas like washrooms or possibly bedroom walls.
Was that Alexa? Hang on a sec. Was that Alexa? What's going on there?
I don't know. We are in a live shop, and the
Sorry,
truth
Danny.
is there is a little bit echoes in here, but that's because it's a live shop.
Speaking of acoustics,
Yeah,
it's a roofing workshop, man. Sorry. So acoustics, and yeah, it's true, because you want to be able to communicate with everybody.
In terms of trends, like it's not something that we're that concerned with. What we like to do is think about how we can make the look and the functionality timeless. So it's like the difference between fashion and style, right? Like fashion, you're always thinking about what's the essentials of the season and so forth, but you're really just buying shit that you don't really need. Whereas style, you find something that works for you, something that is truly personalized to you.
I agree. I totally agree with that.
So like Manny was asking, what is the big trend right now?
Honestly, what we look at is how do we personalize that space for the end user.
People are still not conscious of, like, we're worried about, we want to sell this property. Otherwise, they'd be going a little crazy.
It really depends on the client type. Like
Okay.
for instance, if it's a developer that simply wants to make profit, then a lot of times the key question is to ask, like, how do we design something that sells? Very different than for a commercial client or designing their office, then the question is, how do we create the most productive environment that keeps your employees happy and productive? Then if it's a restaurant, then it's more about the feel of the space, right? Like, how do we deal with traffic flow? How do we deal with the ambiance of the space? And another overlooked part is also lighting as well, and ambiance, like the color temperature. And
I got
think about.
How often should homeowners be renovating? Like, if they just built a brand new, let's say they just gutted a whole house right now, when is the next time that they should actually be considering, we need to remodel the entire house again because we're so fed up with this now? Like, what is that period? Is that 10 years? Is that 20 years?
Next jackpot.
Next jackpot. If they're hiring you.
Well, their home is like a template for how they want to live, right? So if they outgrown who they are as individuals, then that's when they remodel. Like, your space is a physical embodiment of who you are. When you've evolved, or if you want to reinvent yourself, or if you're like growing a family and the functionality is different, that's when you remodel.
That's a very good point. So I can assume that a young couple with brand new babies would probably remodel at that time, and then once the kids are old enough and they've shipped off out, then they'll probably think about remodeling at that time, which will probably be about 20 years or so.
Absolutely.
And then it'll cater to them as an older couple.
I find that a little bit risky. A lot of times when I'm dealing with my customer, I try to tell them to keep it realistic. They don't know when they're going to get sick. They don't know when someone's going to die. They don't know when they're going to have a divorce. They don't know when they're going to
Again with the divorce? Really?
Yeah, these are realistic things that happen. You know, today you and me are friends. Next week, I'm not talking to you.
That's bullshit.
No, I'm just saying it does realistically happen. And when you put so much money and time in personalizing something a little bit too far, I think that it could be a potential disaster in getting your money back.
Yeah, well, I think it's a fine balance, right? Like if you live in a space and maybe you only want to live in that place for 5 or 10 years or so, and then you might think about what is the most commercial viable solution, how would it sell, like, and so forth. But then again, would that compromise with the way you want to live?
Yeah, I heard you saying a lot about kitchen, living room, and dining room. I'm finding a lot of people aren't using dining rooms anymore, and I'm finding a lot of the more asked questions are larger bathrooms and bigger walk-in closets. Is that something happening?
Bigger walk-in closets is always a wish item.
Really?
Almost the size of a bedroom.
It's like, yeah.
And what I'm leading to is like, so I know people that have had 3-bedroom, I'll just use condo, 3-bedroom condos, and they're turning it down to 1-bedroom condos.
Yep.
Is that
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've actually had a friend who is doing that. Like, she's converting her 2-bedroom condo into essentially like the ultimate bachelorette pad.
Wicked. I love it.
So that other bedroom's become her closet.
The other bedroom gets absorbed into her now
it.
master bedroom.
Got
and then
it.
she has like a reading area,
Wicked.
bigger closet. Instead of having a shower in her second washroom, that one's being cannibalized into the master ensuite.
Nice.
Into a 4-piece. And then that washroom just becomes like a powder room.
Wow, they're actually asking for 4 pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
It's a bit luxurious, but hey, why not?
So here's my another question is that we've all been we're talking about big homes. We're talking about people going beyond what they need, always trying to, reach that dream list, that wish list. Realistically, more people are going bungalow now, aren't they? Like instead of second floor or third floor, like I'm seeing a little bit of a change in construction. I'm seeing a lot of people doing bungalows.
Are you saying that they're
bungalows.
purchasing?
Well, I'm just seeing houses are getting smaller. Like we're talking about condos already. I'm finding that people are, as much as it was growing and people are getting bigger homes, now I'm finding that people are going to smaller one-level homes. Do you see that happening?
I see a lot of clients actually converting their property into like triplexes. Like that happens a lot for
Really?
like investment property purposes. Like they'll convert the basement, of course, into an income property. First level is another unit, and then you have the top level being the third unit.
So the kids have moved out. They don't need the extra space. They don't want to move. Let's remodel it, have a triplex,
rent it out and so forth. Yeah,
and make a lot of money.
So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's the increase in housing prices, and there's only so much land, right?
Yeah,
So,
You're
crazy.
so right. It's happening. People are talking about how do you survive? How do you own a house in the city? So you're finding a lot of your customers are actually changing houses into triplex and sixplexes.
we've been getting a lot of
Sixplexes.
Well, that's what it leads to. A triplex leads to a sixplex. A sixplex leads to a 25
not in a
plex.
residential area. No, it'd be a triplex at the most, right?
Well, it depends on where you live.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Danny, how do you like your relationship with contractors? What do you expect from contractors? Like, how do you want to interact with contractors?
I like to interact them as they're part of my team because they build out our designs. So we see them as a partner in the projects and a collaborator. I respect what contractors bring to the table. They're the ones on site doing the work. What they see on the site is essentially essential to the finished products.
You know that we get a lot of contractors that say that, as per contractor, right? So a lot of architects are nice and as per contractor, but you get on site, you got to try to scratch your head and try to figure out how to do that as per. Do that, or do you have a lot of that, or like you try to answer as many questions as you possibly can in the drawings, so then when it gets to site, the contractors pretty much can read it and it's good to go, right?
Yeah, we make it as detailed as possible. And then there are site conditions that needs to be verified on site, like dimensions and so forth. We add a note like contractor to verify on site and so forth.
How many visits do you usually have at a residential home working with a contractor? What are your expectations of how many visits?
So that really depends on the complexity of the projects. Like I find that if it's a addition/renovation, oftentimes there's more visits simply just because when demolition happens,
you find more
there's
problems.
There's problems in the existing
So
that needs to be resolved. So it varies by the project.
So if I'm a new guy and I've just called you,
Yep.
do you have how do you work with a newer guy versus a guy that you're already working with?
Like a newer contractor?
That's right. Are you a little bit more lenient to do more visits to help the relationship start?
Yeah, I find that with younger contractors, they document everything, and then it really depends actually.
That's what you're finding?
Yeah, like they there's one contractor who's fairly new in the industry, and then he was very involved in the process. He was sending us a lot of updates.
Is that because you felt like he was learning, or you felt like
I felt like because he was passionate about the project.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
And that's what you want, right?
Exactly. Someone that really gives a shit.
That goes back to the team playing.
Yeah. When you're looking to bring on a contractor or a construction company, what are you looking for in those contractors?
It varies on the job. If it's a commercial property, it's about like how much they understand about those type of clients. And then if it's in a building that is, shared multi-unit, how much experience do they have coordinating all that?
Okay.
So we think about the project type and we think about whether or not they're suitable based on their past experience, temperaments, and also
Temperament.
where they want to go. Yeah.
Slipped out, Manny.
Is there a stigma? Like, would you guys? Because I've had this question asked of me a lot of times. The younger guys, they feel that since they're just getting started and they may only have 2 or 3 years experience, but they're still good. They're really good and they're passionate. They're hungry, but they get a stigma attached to them where either the clients or the architect or the engineer may not think of them as experienced enough. So have you seen that? Have you seen that kind of stigma attached to the younger guys?
I wouldn't say so.
No?
I find that clients often do their own due diligence. Like they'll interview them. They'll even go see their past work.
Okay.
And then experience is a critical component. But I find that for the most part, it's about whether or not they think they would be the best for the job.
Yeah, you go back to that gut feeling because we've always joked about how none of us have had really an opportunity or needed to actually pull out a resume.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
sure.
like our work kind of speaks for ourselves.
Absolutely.
So if these young kids are actually doing really good work and they're building themselves up and they've got a great social media following, like not engagement, like people are seeing the work there.
Yeah.
But then they meet them and they're going, looking at them going, you look really young. Like now I'm nervous about you. But I think that if they prove themselves that they do quality work and they're passionate and they work with others and they're a team player, that the clients will overlook that age thing, right? Because I think that I'm glad to see, like I'm really happy to see that there's a lot of 21, 22-year-old guys that are actually taking some big responsibility and taking on some big jobs to get that experience because they're passionate about it. So I want to see more of that, but I don't want them to lose work because they think that they're young.
Yeah.
They're too young for the job, right?
Well, I don't want to see them lose money. Sometimes when you're young, you get into bigger projects. You'll take whatever you can, take the opportunity.
There's the no factor. That's like Danny was saying earlier. You learn how to say no.
Yeah. Well, but I think that you find that a little bit more when you've been into business for a few years.
True,
you start
true.
to learn to say no. Because sometimes you're working for free, and why go to work when you're not making anything?
Yeah.
Have you done a job, because I know that you have your own in-house interior designers, have you done a job where the clients have brought the interior designers to the table?
Yes.
And how did that go?
Totally fine. Like we see them as part of our team as well.
Got it.
And then we're coordinating our drawings. If we need specifications from them, we request it, and yeah.
So no dirt, nothing at all, no dirt at all, like no bad stuff, no
Things been
horrible
going
clients,
good for them.
no horrible clients. Everybody's been perfect.
As I mentioned, like the one initial client, I think it was more on my part where I didn't set enough boundaries.
Got it.
Because I think things like this are all within our control.
Is that when you say boundaries? Is that extras?
Yes, extras and
All right,
no's.
because
Yeah.
that's a big key word in mine and Manny's world.
What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
You know, for example, I'll have one of my guys painting in a house, and I'll go get some material, and I'll come back, and then all of a sudden I see a door being built, and I go,
Oh, that
"Hey
kind
man,
of that kind of extra.
what are you doing?" And they're like, well, the homeowner wanted me to put this door in. And I said, who's paying you, me or the homeowner? So
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
there's a lot of extras, but there's got to be some good stuff there. You got to give me
Nothing.
something.
Nothing. Even in school.
There was one instance where it was a project where the client, this is their first time doing a project of their own, and then they had a contractor on board, etc. And the clients were just making a lot of decisions on the fly with the contractor without us actually knowing.
Wow.
And then there was actually one.
I hate that.
Yeah, there was actually one instance where pieces were missed on site, and like for instance, there was a light bulb that we specified. It was for a lighting installation, and then we specified the type of lights for them to find. And the contractor couldn't find it, and then just used the standard halogen light that came with it.
No, you can't do that.
Oh yeah, and then when it was all installed, we're like, yeah, why is it there? And then so what we ended up doing was we ended up just simply finding it, specifying it, and then buying it for the client, and then just installing it on site to show that it actually works.
Got it.
So like that's more of a lack of communication.
That's
when,
all it is.
When we're left in the dark, they were making decisions.
Well, I
so
spend
far-
very little time with architects. Like I said, usually it's 70% customer, 10% engineer, and the rest is really pretty much architect.
20%.
Yeah, and that's only because that's the actual drawing. And if I'm confused and I need to make a call or send a pic, or like you said, I start doing the demo, and we may have done exploratory holes already to see a point load, and you've already talked to engineer and put it into the drawing that this is how it's set. And I need some help, and it needs to be changed. You guys are very little there. Like really, like you come to do the measurements, you do a proposed drawing.
Is that the normal?
If everyone,
Is that normalcy there? Is that the idea that the architects are hardly ever on site, or you like to be on site?
I personally like to be on site when there's key decisions are being made.
like design,
Yeah,
design key. Where I'm talking about just the architect end of it, because you have a very interesting company. You're not just an architect; you're also more of a designer too. But more like the architectural part. I really only see you twice and maybe call you 5 times.
Well, you're talking about the type where so architect will go on site when the framing is up, and then another time when they're
So
there to
key
do the
milestones, key milestones that
sign
you
off.
get in there. Yeah.
Yeah, like we typically schedule in 3 to 5 site visits, and then that's part of the initial contract with the client. And then if more site visits are required,
That's
then we go
extra.
on site. Yeah, that's extra.
Are-
But we find that we often go on site more than that.
Are clients these days, are they getting more tech savvy? Like go back to that acoustic thing. Are they being conscious of building envelope? Are they being conscious of all these things that what we call the stuff that you can't see, but the stuff that the three of us believe that
Energy efficiency.
exactly.
Right.
Are they conscious of this stuff, or they rather spend the money on other big ticket items that they can see?
So there's 2 types of clients. One that are essentially informed, like they either do their own research or they have some experience in doing that. And
Okay.
then another
Or-
one that's
But research doesn't mean it's right. What
yeah,
they
exactly.
researched.
Exactly. But they'll propose ideas, and then they'll actually review the drawings. And then there's another type of clients that do not know how to read drawings at all. So like the stuff that we give them, they might see it, but they won't fully understand it.
We
So-
used to have this little trick back in my film days where on the camera you'd have the viewfinder,
Yeah.
but you could always close the viewfinder. So close it like a shade, right? Because you didn't want any light to go through it, because then you wouldn't be able to see the image. But whenever you got a kind of informed or uninformed client, so to speak, they want to take a peek. We would just do a joke where we automatically would just close the shutter, the eyepiece, and they would take a peek, and then we would ask them, "How's it look?" And they would say, "Yeah, it looks great," because they didn't want to look
Get
like they
out
didn't.
of
Oh no, this was a running joke, and it was a test to find out. Okay, would they say, "I can't see anything; it's closed," or would they say, "No, it looks pretty good," and move
now
on?
the joke's over.
But it's just, and I'm sure it still goes on to this day, but I'm sure that it happens the same way in architecture and also building, where clients rather just agree with you instead of say, well, no, that's not really, I want to try something else. But it's their home, it's their money. Why not just educate yourself a little bit better, properly, and educate yourself, right? So don't get all the information from every source and then try to figure out your own version of that reality, right? So I just, do you see more of those kinds of clients, or you see more of the clients that are informed and they're actually coming to you and going, you know what, we are conscious of building envelope, we are conscious of energy efficiency, we are conscious of all these things that we don't see but are critical. You're seeing more
So
of
I
that?
think my experience, I've personally encountered more of the informed type clients, where they're conscious of what is being built, they're conscious of what we're proposing, and then
Good.
And the thing is, like, even with informed clients, I find that some can't read plans, some just can't read drawings because that's not the way their mind is wired, and then that's where the 3D models and the 3D renderings come in.
Then they understand it.
Exactly.
They can visualize it at that point.
Exactly. So
What's their biggest concern? Is that when they're looking at drawings, they can't visualize whether or not that room is large enough or correct enough for them to be happy? Is that the idea?
it's when we get into like interior elevations, they're looking at it, they're like, oh, why is that place there? What? And so forth.
What do you like to? Okay, so out of all the stuff that you've been doing, what is it that you really enjoy that you want to do?
Like project types?
Yes.
I love spaces where a lot of people use. So like
multi-use spaces.
multi-use spaces and like
Very
spaces
functional
like-
multi-use space.
Yeah, like I love designing what's known as like the third place. Like you have your work, you have your home, and then you have the place that you go in between. So like things like restaurants, social spaces. Those are ones that I find super interesting because a lot of people use it. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I interrupted. Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
I
it's
liked-
actually
I liked
very-
where you were going with
Yeah,
it.
it's a very valid point because that's actually a challenge. Because you have to have individuals use it, you have to have several people use it, you got to have a mix of both using it. So that's a challenge right there.
Yeah, those are always the funnest to work on because you're trying to wrestle with different restraints and different end users, and the creative challenges they are just more interesting to work on.
It doesn't sound residential. It sounds like you like commercial. Another thing me and Manny keep talking about, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it. The most interesting things that have come into construction come from commercial. Do you agree?
Residential construction.
That's right. Like we've been talking about this, and we just find that some of the best ideas or some of the coolest, hippest looking homes are all coming from commercial. Do you feel the same way?
I feel yeah, big time.
Do you think they spend more money in commercial than they do in residential
For
for
sure.
technology?
Oh, big time.
For sure.
Big time. Yeah.
For sure they do, man.
So
It's a money-making building,
Yeah, it's a sheer
right? Your home is not a money-making building. It is over time, but it's not a money-making building, right?
Well, it's interesting what he's saying. He's finding more clients making triplexes from single dwelling homes.
True. I love that because it makes sense. Why move out, go to an old folks home,
Yeah,
rent it out?
But for me, what happens to the neighborhood when that's happening?
Cares?
Yeah.
I do if I live there. Like right now, I live on an amazing block. It's new money now.
You
but
could
there's
fit a nineplex in your house, man.
but the street is beautiful, old architecture, and then we have some buildings that are kind of been thrown in the mix. And there's a lot of problems around those buildings that kind of leak out into neighborhood. People stealing things, people going into our backyards.
Oh, okay. All right.
And what I'm leading to is sometimes you have a beautiful residential neighborhood, you lose that when it goes commercial, right?
Going into that conversation, like one trend that we're actually seeing is the rise of the entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And Intuit did a study that by 2020, 45% of the workforce in Canada are going to be freelancers, self-employed, or on-demand workers.
What percentage?
45%. So that means only one. That's close to like 1 in 2.
Yeah.
That's why we see a lot of co-working spaces just popping up everywhere in the city. I actually think what we're going to see more are live-work units.
For sure.
Like,
I agree with you.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I think it's really cool.
So
I
what's
wish
going to
we-
happen? What's going to happen to all these commercial spaces then?
I think a lot of it has to do with zoning.
Okay.
Because I mean, what you can do right now is you can have like a occupancy type residential zoning where you work at your home, but then bring clients and like say running a retail out of it is more difficult because zoning doesn't allow for that. So
I could see that. I could
But
totally see that.
Do you see the bylaws getting easier or harder now that you're saying that? Because for me, I love it. I love it as an entrepreneur. I love it that a contractor could have his truck and his shop underneath and live upstairs in the same dwelling. It's energy efficient. You're not traveling. You're home. You need to build something, you go downstairs. But what are happening with the bylaws? Does that mean that
they're changing every day?
Well,
because
they're
even
changing,
the laneway,
yeah.
the
Are they
laneway
getting
garages,
worse?
the laneway garages are all being converted into rental properties.
Yeah, like
We need to do that.
for sure. I mean that came when the new chief city planner Greg Linton came on board and said, "Hey, we actually need to provide more housing within the city."
Yeah.
So the bylaws for laneway housing was essentially relaxed and put into place. A lot of homeowners are jumping on board into that.
I 1000% agree with this
Yeah.
because these are all dwellings that are just sitting there, and there's you can use the space right above.
Yeah, I mean, like the trends that we always talk about are simply influenced by three factors. One is the social, one is the economic, and the third one is the technological. So if we look at what's happening in society right now, and with just like with space, there's a lack of space happening, and that's why laneway housing was put in forth as a solution to make usage of all those laneways and garages that are simply being underutilized. So as we move towards as a society, I think how we live and how we work is going to be affected by those three factors.
Yep.
Oh, so this is interesting. I like where you're going with this. So I saw it going from a three bedroom home to a single dwelling, like 1 bedroom home. Now I'm starting to think that we're going to take another turn and maybe getting into tiny homes. Is that something
I
you're
don't think
already
that's-
getting into?
That won't take off. I don't think it's going to take off.
I think we're going to go into like smarter homes, like homes that are
Small and efficient?
more minimal and more functional. Going back to the whole societal trends, like a few years ago, it was age of consumerism. We just keep on buy, and then the whole hoarders came about.
Yep.
Like people are buying self-storage spaces that they're renting to store stuff that they don't even need. Then
you saw a rise in actual people building storage places.
Exactly. So now it's more the minimalist movement, or I think it's also affected by mindfulness, meditation, and so forth. Where society as a general is realizing that having clutter, like mental and physical, is not healthy.
So we're going
yes.
backwards now.
Yeah, to be more minimal and be more conscious of the way we use space.
Yeah, so like my grandparents, they were very simple. They had 2 pairs of shoes. One to go to work and church, and a nice pair to...
How many pairs of shoes do you have?
You don't even want to know. I've got snowboarding boots, dirt biking boots, mudding boots. I've got my work boots. I could keep going
Podcast
on. 10
boots.
pairs of dress shoes. I mean, it's not realistic, but I've been thinking about it, and me and my wife have been trying to downsize everything that we have in our life to make our life more enjoyable and more simple. And the more we release and get out of our lives, I feel a weight lifting off of us. You kind of live this like fantasy dream where big, you want to buy everything except for tools, of course.
You can never have
in my industry,
too many tools.
always make you money.
All right, so Carlito, we got to wrap this up. So he always has a few questions at the end when I tell him we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
So jotting down his notepad.
So
Shoot the questions.
I'm just interested. Did you build a lot of models when you were young?
I did.
I knew it. Were the Army models?
No, they were Lego
Were they?
models.
I thought for sure you were doing like bombers and like planes.
I
And
did
stuff
like big
that.
robots. Like
Did you?
Like robots.
Yeah, I did. I was into Grandizer and stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. So yeah.
Nice.
We all did.
So if you could change something in the industry for construction, what would it be?
I mean, we're still building wood timber homes and so forth.
It's insane that we are.
Been around for.
Are you laughing at that?
Yes, very much.
I think we're ripe for a disruption. What I would like to see is more intentionality in the way that we build things.
So you see concrete and metal?
Not so much. I see like really cool high tech stuff.
Tell me what you would like to see being built, or what do you see coming up?
Actually, the question is really what country is doing what you're liking?
I think Germany and Japan.
There we go.
If we look at those two countries as models of how we should be building. Like they have the coolest, most cutting edge stuff.
And what are we looking at? We're going to get into in the next 20 years in homes. Just kind of like, looking into the future. What do you see that's going to happen in homes?
More integrative technologies, like
Modular.
yeah, modular, and then integrated technology that's within the home itself. And
So wall panels that have certain features in them.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I agree.
How about building materials? Do you see us getting away from wood?
Don't think we'll ever veer away from wood.
This is North America, man.
Yeah.
As an architect, do you like concrete homes better, metal, or wood? Because you are a commercial guy, so I'm asking because I want to see where you're going to kind of go.
I'm a big fan of concrete, but at the same time, I think where we're at, wood makes the most sense. As much as we laugh about wood, like it just makes a lot of sense to continue using it.
Timber strand or?
Yeah.
Right.
And what I would actually like to see more of are hybrid timber type buildings. There's the
Like engineered timber.
engineered timber. It's actually non-combustible.
Okay, and it's
Yeah.
also salvaging what's
Yep.
already been torn down or what's going to be torn down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's material that's being used from off-cut
It's
material
recycling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's
and with
great
the
about
glue
it.
and the pressure, it's 100 times stronger.
But it costs a lot more. That's the problem. So
And
you
it-
try to convince a client to actually increase the lumber budget, lumber package by twice, sometimes three times.
But it's about education again. Something
I
like
agree, but
something
this
like
goes
that
back
has no
to the
bellies. It doesn't have a warp
clients. They don't see these things
because no one explains it to them. It's our job as business owners to. I mean,
Any more
across the board.
questions?
Yes. If I'm someone young coming out of school and I wanted to get into construction or become an architect, what are your simple steps that you think could help somebody out?
Do a bachelor's program that has a technical element tied into it, and then do a master's program that's very conceptual. That way you can get the best of both worlds.
You get a balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a balance.
And then while you're in school, get your BCIN, which is the
But that doesn't do much anymore. That's only certain. That's
There's a
very
cap
low
on it.
standard, right? Of like structural.
No, well, BCIN basically allows anyone to stamp a drawing.
Yeah, but you could do like a simple doorway and a smaller header.
No. You're
and
at
stamp.
the BCIN. It cuts off at a certain size square structure, right?
Yeah, 300 square meters.
300 square meters.
So like you can still design a small house and so forth.
Or a basement.
But I'm saying that for students to even look at that puts them way ahead
Yeah,
of everyone. And
for sure.
It really allows them to understand the regulations and why things are built the way they are in Canada right now.
Something you said earlier.
Last question.
You think that the most important thing for me from what you were saying is to really learn your minimum requirement, like minimum standards, and just understand the whole building language.
Yeah, I mean the whole building code emphasizes on two things. One is safety, like fire safety, or they would get out of the building and so forth. And the next part is accessibility, which makes sense if you consider like we're having aging population.
It's huge.
The baby.
The
boomers.
percentage of that is increasing every year.
Yeah.
Dramatically. We're all going to be in that situation.
Exactly.
I'm already, even in my year one of construction, I was already having conversations about accessibility in bathrooms. How we know what the standard looks like, which very medicinal. We don't want that as elders, right? We don't want that medicinal looking, as fun it is to wake up in the middle of the night and catch that infomercial in the middle of the night. We don't want our bathroom to look like that.
Exactly.
Well, I kind of disagree because a lot of the coolest stuff that we're building is curbless showers.
That's curbless. I'm talking about the
Wider
retractable
doors.
tub and stuff like that. I'm talking about there's got to be cooler ways.
You can
but-
keep it clean.
But if you can be a young architect, be conscious of that because there is a huge aging population that's coming at you, right? So if you can start coming up with some cool ways to be that accessible, then all the great. Any more questions? Because I want to wrap it up.
One of the biggest and most important things for me and the message that we want to give to everyone in construction, I keep telling people, or me and Manny do, what ideas can you give someone so that they can save for retirement or an investment for the future? Do you have any ideas of what you could, kind of like give someone what direction they should go?
If you got a young guy starting out and you got to think about the future, what not to do or what to do or what to pay attention.
I would say
you want to be in this game for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So like, what advice would you give your 10-year younger self then?
Yeah, it's excellent.
Save at least $1,000 every month.
Every month.
Every month. And
$12K a year.
In 10 years, yeah. In 10 years, it's like 120,000.
And just keep building off of that.
Just keep building off of that. So be intentional with what you're spending, but be more intentional with what you're saving, investing in.
My question is, do you have a retirement savings?
Because you're self-employed, right? So that's why this is an interesting question that Carlito always brings up, because most of us in this industry are self-employed people, right? So we don't have our pensions. We don't have all that kind of security from working with somebody else, a big company. It's smart. Start saving that money, be conscious of the future, and realize that, you are in your 20s, but before you know it, you'll blink and you'll be in your 50s. And then where will you be at that point? So you just need to figure out what to do and how to do it.
Well, I actually love one of your Manny Mondays where you tell young contractors to like pack their own lunch instead of freaking buying that.
He does that to everybody. Then everybody was asking me, what did I have in my lunch? And I was like, leave me alone, okay? I could preach it. Don't ask me.
Okay, so it's not a question. Everybody's looking for an architect. Everybody needs to find someone to work with. What is your Instagram feed, your telephone number, contact?
How do we get a hold of you?
Who you are?
Yeah, for sure. So our Instagram account is at syllable.design, syllable.design. And you can find us on our website at www.syllable.design as well.
And then email?
My email is dt@syllable.design.
Cool.
Any phone numbers?
Phone number? You can give up the phone number if you want.
I'm good. I'll get a lot.
Okay, leave it alone. That's fine. Danny, thank you so much for joining us, man. A lot of questions. It was interesting, man. Just a lot of questions, a lot of answers, and trying to figure out.
I just feel like I'm starting now.
I know, but we could always have a follow up. We can always have. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Danny. And he does this thing. So that's been another episode of The Construction Life, and we really appreciate, Jenny, you joining us. And please, everybody, check out his website. Give him a holler if he needs, and give him a follow on Instagram. And tune in next week for our next episode.
Straight from 416 TO, baby. Yeah.